Hey humans, how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. On this episode, I sat down with Sheri Kendrick. I was in Sarasota on tour on my way to Key West for some music stuff. And my friend Tim Raines, who's, by the way, a fantastic painter, if you want to check him out, Tim Raines, he said, oh, you should really talk to my friend Sheri. She's great. She does some remarkable work with photography. And I said, great. So I contacted Sheri and found out what an extraordinary woman she is. I went to her photography studio and we chatted about her nonprofit, Little Light of Mine, which you can find at littlelightofmine.org. And what she does, besides being a photographer in general, the nonprofit Little Light of Mine works with families who have terminally ill children, and Sheri comes in and photographs the kids so that the families have lasting memories. And in some cases, when the children pass away, Sheri is there to be a witness, and you know, the parents get to finally take the tubes and the wires out of their children, and Sheri can take a picture of them looking, you know, like a kid instead of, you know, hooked up to all the stuff. It's remarkable work. Man, I can't even begin to imagine what it's like to be in those situations. It just speaks to Sheri's character and her light. Yeah, and she you know, we talked about other stuff too in her life, things that she's interested in, but this was really the focus, was her nonprofit and the work she does with kids and the families. I put links, of course, on heyhumanpodcast.com that links to Little Light of Mine and information about Sheri in general and the hospital she works with there in Sarasota, the Children's Hospital. So please do go check that out. And, you know, as usual, go to iTunes, rate, review. I really appreciate that. Get the word out. Tell your friends. And if you want, follow me on Instagram or Facebook, Hey Human Podcast. I would say follow me on Twitter, but you'd probably be disappointed because I do that link to Instagram thing, and that's really the extent of my Twitter abilities on Hey Human Podcast. I don't know what it is about Twitter. I'm just not big on the Twitter. I'm not good at it. We have to know our strengths, don't you think? So, usual stuff. Go out there, join, like, encourage, share, do all the stuff. And thank you for listening. And if you want to email me, I would love to hear your thoughts. Susan at heyhumanpodcast.com. Also, I want to bring up my friend Ellen is going to be interviewing me for Hey Human in an upcoming episode. And, well, if you have any questions that you want her to ask me, please email them, Susan at heyhumanpodcast.com. I'm not going to look at the questions ahead of time. In the subject line, you can just write question for Susan, and I promise I won't look at them, and I'll just forward it on to Ellen. And yeah, I'm going to post on my Facebook wall as well, so people can do it there too. All right, without further ado, Sheri Kendrick, Little Light of Mine. Hi, Sheri Kendrick.
Hello, Susan Ruth.
Welcome to Hey Human. Thank you for being on the show. So, Sheri, you are a special light in the universe as far as I'm concerned, because not only are you a photographer, but you take your gifts as a photographer and you have given back to people by, you photograph terminally ill children.
Yes.
As a nonprofit, so you don't charge any money, you just, so let's talk about that. Okay. How did that come to be? And explain about yourself too, like how did you get into photography in the first place, and then the inclination to move in that direction?
Okay, so how did I get into photography? I have been doing photography since I was a teenager, starting out in high school in the yearbook staff.
Oh.
And even before that, like taking silly little portraits of my family in the living room. So I've just been drawn to photography since I was like teeny tiny, little.
Yeah.
And then I had a little break. I had a career in skydiving, but even then, I did like skydiving for 10 years.
Wait, when you mean you had a career in skydiving, meaning you taught?
I was an instructor.
Or somebody paid you to jump out of airplanes on purpose?
Well,
both.
That's what an instructor is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. How many jumps have you done?
Somewhere over 600. I don't actually know the exact number right off the top of my
I
head.
would never do that in a million years.
Oh, it's so fun. You should do it once.
My ex, he was big into skydiving, and which was fine, but I just nope. I'm afraid of heights.
Where did he jump?
Washington State.
I haven't been out there.
Yeah.
Okay. So before that, I got a degree in journalism with a minor in photography.
Okay.
So basically, that's a degree in photojournalism. And I worked for a paper doing freelance kind of photography, standalone photography for the newspaper. So, I mean, it's always been a part. Even I was actually a preschool teacher for a few years, which I loved. And even then, I took my camera to work. Actually, this is how my career in photography, where I actually started getting paid, is I would do pictures of my kids in preschool, and then and I'd post them on our bulletin board, and parents started like saying, "Hey, will you come to my house and do like pictures of our family?" And I'm like, oh. And then people started paying me. I wasn't even asking for money.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and so that's how that like spawned the business. I went ahead and like opened a DBA, and people actually paid me for this thing that I love to do anyhow. So that was really awesome. And so how did Little Light of Mine start out of that? I've had a few experiences in my career where people have called me because a family member was in hospice and only had a short time to live. And so I went and did those shoots, and, it was pretty powerful to go and do portraits knowing that one of them was getting ready to die. And providing, those were paid jobs. Those was before the nonprofit started. But the experience was pretty powerful. And my specialty has been a lot of families and children. Mostly, I do a lot of headshots and other creative stuff that I don't make money. I spend money. But
welcome to the creative arts.
So, but the commission part of it is mostly children and family and newborns, and so I have volunteered for various organizations over the years. I've always volunteered for something, and most of it was children oriented. I photographed foster kids for adoption. I did volunteer for some two organizations that are sort of similar to mine, and I enjoyed aspects of it, but I just wanted. There was things of it that did not resonate with me, and so I wanted to start my own to do it the way that I felt like the need was for the families. One thing being that we don't limit the reason why they're terminally ill. We don't have specifications like it's cancer only or heart defects only. It's anybody, any child who's fighting a life-threatening illness. We will photograph them. So basically, it's combining my craft, my love for children, and my heart sense to volunteer, and
merged them all together.
And that's how I was going to volunteer for other organizations, but I felt like I could do it better. So.
Yeah. How did you pick Little Light of Mine as the moniker?
Because there have been a few cases, and again, this is kind of before I even started with the organization, but where parents have called me. We have All Children's here is a pretty world-renowned hospital. There's some doctors here that treat very rare diseases and defects. There is a few people a few moms that would call me and describe their child's condition and really prepare me for something awful, like that their heads are too big or whatever, just like and they're not cognitive and all this, I think, to prepare me so I'm not like shocked or freaked out, which I have never been shocked or freaked out. And even before the organization, I also have photographed a lot of autistic children. And so during the photo shoot, quite often, even when they're in a vegetative state or just cognitively really challenged, there's always, when you're patient, it does take some patience because sometimes it takes a while, but if you just kind of ease into it and really focus on their eyes and giving them your undivided attention, there's like a spark that comes on, and there's just this little flicker of I'm here, even though my body is not agreeing with me and I have all these problems, there's a little part of them, and it really does melt my heart that I have poked through the wall. I'm sure a lot of people miss that when they're just out and about in their lives, they just see them in a wheelchair and define them as their disability. And so that's where the Little Light of Mine kind of started.
That's really beautiful. I think as a culture, or maybe as a humankind, we look at people with disabilities as less than. It's an unfortunate, and we forget that they still have that soul in there, and even if they can't speak.
And I think that as a society, and I don't know how it is in other countries, but in our society, I think that we are so innately just awkward. Like we have fears of people that are different than us. Mm-hmm. So I think it's easier for us to kind of turn away from someone in a wheelchair than it is for us to try to treat them just like someone who is standing and talking to us, where seeing a child in a wheelchair and smiling at them and treating them just like you would a little child that was standing up and being cute, what we see as cute, is not something that comes intuitively to our culture.
Well, not only that, but being willing to understand that even if they're not responding, that they're in there. Yeah. That it starts bringing into the idea of the soul and the universe and energy and all that stuff, which I'm a big fan of, and if you, like you said, have the patience, you'll catch it. You'll catch that moment. Right. Yeah.
I mean, we are all just humans, and they are no less human than you or I or any healthy child. Or
how do they find you?
Well, there's a few ways. We have partnered with All Children's Hospital, so they refer us. Yeah. There's also another nonprofit organization here in the Tampa Bay area called Children's Dream Fund, and they are like Make-A-Wish, kind of, but they are strictly to the Tampa Bay area, so they're the local, but they grant wishes for children who are fighting a life-threatening illness. So they refer their families to us, so we do a lot of cross referrals, and then there's quite a few people who just we're growing in our awareness in the community, and so there's just a lot of people who call us private referrals, and we also work with some pediatric hospice groups in the Tampa Bay area. So, and we will go to the hospital, we will go to people's homes if the kids are healthy enough. We will go to a park. We also have we have a shooting space right here. So,
can you remember back to the first time you worked with a terminally ill child? What was that experience like? And it was here in St. Petersburg.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. There's somebody that comes to my mind. I'm not even sure who the very, very first one was, but because again, before the organization, I didn't really ask all the conditions. I because I'm so close to All Children's, I did get a fairly frequent request to conduct photo shoots, but because it was not through Little Light of Mine, I'm not sure if they were technically terminally ill or if they were just severely disabled. Oh. But the one that stands out to me really is a little guy named Isaac, and he was waiting for a heart transplant at All Children's. He was about maybe 5 or 6 months old, I think, when I photographed him. And
5 or 6 waiting for a heart transplant.
5 or 6 months old. Months.
Yes. 5 or 6 months old waiting for a heart.
Waiting for a transplant.
I can't even imagine what the parents have to go through with that. Let alone the little child.
It was a tragic ending. He did get a heart, so the photo shoot was beautiful. The mom and him just were in love with each other very clearly. He was just
Isaac and his mom.
Mm-hmm, yeah, his mom's name is Angie, and it was just it was a day that I personally had some personal issues going on, and I had some financial issues. I was stressed out about paying my rent and paying my bills, and I got to the hospital I had like 3 or 4 kids to photograph that day, and when I got to his room, it's really wild sometimes how this sort of erases your other world around you, and I just it totally grounds you and brings you this new perspective. So, and that happened that day. The way he looked at me, he like, I don't know if he was sensing something was going on with me, like maybe he was picking up on my energy. I have no idea, but he looked at me and it really did like totally melt my soul. It was pretty powerful. And he got a heart transplant a few months after that, and I got another phone call from the hospital that a child had just passed, and the mom wanted me to photograph them without all the tubes and everything before they took him to the morgue. I did not know it was Isaac.
Oh my God.
And so I got there, and when I realized it was him, it was pretty like it was pretty sad. So, but I was very, very happy that I had been able to give them not only for the photographs from that day it's a documentation of their journey, but the photographs from the time before, because they were so incredibly moving. They were really powerful, of him looking up at his mom and in her arms, and cognitively he was perfectly healthy. His heart just wasn't strong, and so that it's experiences like that I knew would be meaningful, and I knew they would be powerful. But now that I'm doing this regularly, it really is just as much benefiting me and my mental health.
How do you think it's changed you?
Well, it has absolutely put things in perspective. When I go in there and I think I've just got all these big problems, and then I walk out going, I don't have any problems. It's everything is relative. So, you can really let yourself get wound up about a bunch of really stupid stuff, and then when you see somebody else, or even like we as Americans, I think, are just super guilty of taking everything for granted, and we have first world problems, and we get real caught up in our first world problems. And then when you go to a hospital, like when I left that day and Angie and her husband were grieving the loss of this child, I was like, how can I even think about being upset about anything? I can't. And I'm leaving this hospital, leaving, this building. Inside this one of these rooms, there are 2 parents that are saying goodbye to their son.
Yeah. Everything is certainly relative, but I do think that we are all entitled to have our stuff too. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's a conundrum, because certainly there's, everywhere you look, there's someone having a much worse day, having a much worse life than you are. But then,
absolutely. And if you do it in the big picture,
yeah,
globally,
yeah,
then absolutely,
yeah.
Because even then, you've got children that need heart transplant. They're never going to get a heart transplant, not even a chance.
Yeah.
They're just, the infant mortality rate is higher. People are actually starving to death still in this world right now.
In this country, people are starving.
Yeah.
It's not just third world. We also
True.
have a major hunger problem in America. But yeah, globally, humans have a lot of catching up to humanity. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. There's a lot to be dialed into.
It's hard. It's hard to honor your own feelings when you're feeling sad or happy, or and not feel guilty for feeling happy or guilty for feeling sad, knowing that there are other people going through all their own things. it's such a hard balance in some ways to find the permission to feel crappy, you know, about your life in a moment, and then be reminded of how short it is and how beautiful it is, right, even in its tragedy.
Absolutely.
And as a photographer, to be able to capture that, I can't even begin to wrap my head around what you've seen. You know?
It's pretty intense. I mean, one of the most intense ones was actually, the doctors had recommended one child be taken off life support, and because his outlook was just so grim medically, and the parents had scheduled him to be off life support, and they wanted me to document the whole day. And so I was there in the morning. All the everybody was there, grandparents and everybody, and the hospital chaplain, and all of the people that deal with this situation. There's a whole team of people especially for this. And I was there for like 6 hours. I mean, they wean him off in a very controlled way until I think the last thing is pain meds that they keep him on until he actually passes. And he was in his mother's arms, and she had this is hours in, it takes hours, and she had her hand on his heart and felt his last heartbeat. And I mean, it was just like, and then she bathed, and she had a plan, she had this all pre-planned, and she was able to take all the tubes. The doctors helped her take all this tape and, the tubes and everything out of his face. And then it was just him naked, for the first time since he had been born. Nothing, no tubes, no tape, no nothing. And she bathed him, sponge bathed him, and we took him down to the garden so he could actually be outside in natural light, first time for that too. And it was incredibly powerful experience. And like you said, I mean, there's something to be said for it. There's joy and there's grief, and the two of them are very closely related in a way. So, that level of emotion is intense, but I personally am very grateful to be invited into that space. It's a very sacred space, and it does make me feel alive just as much as joy makes me feel alive. I can turn that off.
Okay. Sorry, the air conditioning had a big loud explosion, so now we're AC free. Okay, sorry, go on.
So that experience had like a huge effect on me. I cried for a few days on that. Some people are like, "How do you do this without crying?" I'm like, "Who says I don't cry?"
Well, because to be a great photographer, I feel like you also have to be a very empathic human being. You have to, because some people are naturals in front of the camera and they just eat it up. Some people, like myself, can be very uncomfortable in front of the camera. And but I have worked with some photographers that have taken really extraordinary photographs of me, and I think, how did you do that? Because I know how in my brain how it feels. Now, obviously, with infants, you don't have to worry about that. But so for you, assuming you are quite empathic. Is that a fair assessment?
I would say so.
Yeah. So you deal with death on such a regular basis. Does that not, do you have anyone to talk to afterward, or is there any way to process it out of yourself?
We have some on our team, on our volunteer team, we have some pediatric nurses and people that, I can reach out to. The vice president of the organization.
Of your organization.
Her name is Sybil Phalo. She actually was brought to the organization because she lost a child when the little girl was 2. And so she's a good person to talk to. She's an amazing, really amazing human being. She has been with me. She has been my support system since the first day of Little Light of Mine. She has pretty much been right there with me. And she's still right there with me, and I don't know what I would do without her. Yay, Sybil!
Yay, Sybil!
Love you, girl!
Do you have children?
I do. I have a 14-year-old son and a 9-year-old daughter.
Wow, you must have started at about 10. You look very young.
Yay, could you make sure that gets me?
Oh, because you're a redhead. Redheads stay young looking.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I didn't start
How
young.
do you... So there's another level to that. I mean, my gosh, here you are. You have your own children who are healthy, I assume, and succeeding in their growth and as they move up. And here you are in the worst moment of other parents' lives. How does that all go in your brain pan?
My brain pan, I like that word. It makes me appreciate what I have. When I leave a day like the day that the little child was disconnected from life support, I am definitely in a different headspace. And, when I'm around my kids on a day like that, it's calm, it's sweet, and it's grateful. I'm just in a complete state of gratitude and I talk to my kids about it too, and sometimes they see me crying, and sometimes, they will ask, and I'm like, I photographed somebody who's not going to make it, or, something like that, and they're getting dialed into that. They're seeing it somewhat regularly, but, and my daughter, my 9-year-old, she'll ask me some questions and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, and that's what life is, We don't know that we're going to be here tomorrow. Even without having an illness, we could get in a car accident.
Sure.
So it's really, really important that, we are on good terms with each other, and that we don't take each other for granted, and, we live in this moment, because this moment is all we know we have. So
it is a shame we're so afraid of our mortality, because I feel like the royal we, if we were to embrace our mortality and the fact that nobody has a clue when our last day is, that maybe we would be nicer to each other.
Oh, absolutely.
I'd like to think so. I'd like to hope so.
I think it would dramatically change the way we live our lives if we could be a little bit more aware and use our sense of mortality as a tool
for good.
For good.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean,
if only. How's it changed your parenting?
It really does make me very grateful to have the kids. I don't see them. You said, oh, they're probably healthy kids, but some of the kids that I have photographed were healthy until they were 10. They were healthy until they were 15.
Oh, yeah.
And they were diagnosed with cancer then, and then they died 2 years later. So,
wow.
It does put that, in perspective that, as far as I know, my kids are healthy, but they too could come down with they could be diagnosed with something. And that rings through my head. It's actually made me probably a little bit more paranoid than the average parent, because I'm like, my daughter will say, oh, my leg hurts. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's got cancer, and have to ward off some of that.
Yeah.
Hypochondria a little bit, but then again, it's very real. A lot of the children that are diagnosed were misdiagnosed. Oh, that's growing pains. That's nothing. It's a flu. It's a what? It's that, And then after these things don't go away and they become persistent, they do further tests. And a lot of times when kids are diagnosed with cancer, it's stage 3 or 4 because of those misdiagnoses. Yeah. So I want to stay on top of it,
Sure.
and
without turning your kids into hypochondriacs.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's one way it's affected me. But just in general, just trying to teach them over and over and over again that we need to live in this moment, and that mostly, everything doesn't really matter. All of these things, like when they have a conflict, or with each other, or with schoolmates, or with schoolwork or whatever, just trying to teach them, in a week will this matter? In 3 months will it matter? In 5 years does this matter? No. It doesn't. It's not going to matter, The little 2-rule thing that don't sweat the small stuff, and it's all small stuff. I try and get them to realize that, again, with the awareness of mortality, without being morbid, without to being too over the top with it, but truthful. It is truthful,
Sure.
So
for the children who are verbal, who are terminally ill,
they're usually amazing.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in some of the documentaries I've seen with terminally ill children, or even some of the news things I've seen, the children seem very wise, very old soul, and very not unafraid. Do you find that?
Yes,
for the most part.
I don't understand all of the phenomenon but there is a consistent energy that comes out in wisdom, and like you said, like you're an old soul, like these children are wise beyond their years. I am not sure I don't really know. I really have no idea why. But even that baby, like, he wasn't even verbal. And I am telling you, the way that Isaac looked at me was like, I felt like God was looking at me. Whoever that is. I don't know, But, just the spirit that he just, it's almost like he wanted to get my attention. And I've seen it with my own kids sometimes, they can see that my brain is somewhere out and somewhere else. And they will bring me back down. A lot of times it is just with eye contact, without words. But, even the families, not just the children, but the moms and the dads and this. When I walk into a room where, all of this is going on, the love is so much more fierce. And, these guys are dialed into a whole other thing because someone's life is being threatened. And it's
the doctors, you mean? These guys who...
The parents.
Oh, yeah.
The parents, the family members, the siblings. The siblings have a whole different thing going on than healthy siblings that aren't aware that they could lose each other.
Sure.
But yeah, they're definitely a different category. I mean, I have photographed a lot of families in my life, and the families that have a child with a life-threatening illness are special. They are very special because I think they realize every day is precious. Every moment is precious. So they don't sweat the small stuff.
Yeah.
I've had some families that bring their child in with life support, machines, this, that, suction, and they're more at ease and more joyful and more at peace than, a family driving in here with their, and they have, usually are struggling with finances, these families.
Sure, it's very expensive.
Yeah, I mean, it is stressful, like you would think.
Many families go bankrupt when having a terminally ill child.
It's intense, like hearing some of these financial stories.
Many end up in divorce as well, because the trauma of it all and the pain and the sorrow, and when they look at their spouse, they see their child reflected in their eyes, all that stuff. I think the statistics for that are...
It's a lot of stress. It's amazing. I have a lot of families that have survived it, though. I don't know why Little Light of Mine has seen a lot of the families that have survived it, but...
perhaps because they're willing to bring in somebody to document this tragic and beautiful thing that they already see beyond the... You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
But
it is just... really, I mean, I knew it was going to be powerful, and even when I was skydiving, I was, there were young people that died in the sport. It's a very small web, even though it's worldwide. You kind of get to know people from other drop zones and stuff. And there is tragedy. And
the guy that taught, I went in the wind tunnel thing. My ex bought me for my birthday, which I was terrified the entire time, but I did it. And the guy that was my instructor, who was gorgeous and full of life and just fun and funny and a great teacher, he was the one directing me in the wind tunnel. He died 2 weeks later, coming in too fast.
What wind
hot
tunnel?
Dogging. In Sky, what's it called? Sky something. It's in Seattle or in...
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, in Washington.
Yeah, so, I encountered that frequent enough when that was mostly my 20s. And
were you ever scared to jump?
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I was the most, in high school, if there was a category for most likely to not do anything scary or risky, I would have taken that by,
Is that why you chose to do skydiving?
No. The funny story with that is I was working in a newspaper, and I met a person who took me, he jumped, and, he's like, hey, you want to come out and just watch sometime? And I'm like, sure. I lived in Pasco County, which is north of here, There's like one race, there's one religion, and there's one political party.
And it's this guy, right?
No.
It's jumping out of the plane.
White people.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant that it unified people.
Christian people, Republican people. So I
Wait.
was raised in this environment, and I did not expand my mind or my
Okay, I
horizons
think
very
I'm
much.
confusing. You're saying that the way you were raised was white, Christian, Republican, and that you were drawn to this other world that wasn't that. Okay.
Right.
I thought you were saying that the skydiving people were like that.
Where we were, he asked me to go out to the drop zone.
Okay.
And so I was raised, I'm going to give you a little background, like my mind was very, I've always naturally been kind of curious about the world, but just never had exposure to it.
Sure.
So I went out to the drop zone, and in Florida, skydiving, there's a lot of foreigners, a lot, probably more than there is Americans, because it's just a cheap place to skydive in the winter. So when I went out there for the first time, I mean, there was, this is in the 90s, but we had like, a bunch of trailers and tents, and nobody had TVs. Nobody was glued to a TV. There wasn't really cell phones.
No,
like there was
pre-cell phone.
Yeah, so we weren't all glued to a phone. I'm sure that's changed. But, and I was just exposed to all this culture. There was like Germans and people, Finns and people from France and UK and around a campfire every night. Mostly everybody spoke English. That was a common language. But there was people would go off on their own languages, and I was just completely like wowed by the experience. I had never even considered skydiving myself. I was only there to be a spectator. Mm-hmm. And then I was like drawn to it. So I was drawn to the culture and that lifestyle. And I ended up like within a month starting to plan on moving out there and just living out there because I was so like hungry in Zephyr Hills. Is
that in Florida?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah, it's Skydive City, but it's a pretty big drop zone for Florida.
Okay.
Pretty well known. And so I ended up like, before I ever even made a skydive or thought about making a skydive, I ended up selling and donating most of my stuff from my apartment. And I was in my senior year in university, so I was almost graduated with my photojournalism degree. And so I just moved out there. And I wasn't even a skydiver. So they call us WIFOs, but I was an in WIFO because I was like...
What's a WIFO?
A WIFO, it's WUFFO, a person who... That's what skydivers call non-skydivers. Oh. Yeah. It's not. I don't think it's a term of endearment.
So like a groupie, a skydive groupie?
Yeah.
Yes, I've never heard that.
Yeah. So, so we would, I'd go out there every weekend, and then eventually I ended up moving out there, and... 6 months after I lived there, everybody was like, so you don't jump? No, I don't jump. And people were like, why not? Why don't you do a jump? And I'm like, oh, well, maybe I will. So I did. Scared the life out of me. And
did you pee? I would have peed.
No. No, I didn't pee on that jump. But
I know I drooled a lot in the air tunnel. Like a lot.
Was it like running
God.
up your face?
I drooled like a basset hound. It was crazy.
That's so funny.
I don't know if basset hound or whatever, bulldog, I guess.
I think basset hounds drool. But yeah, I was scared, but it was good. I mean, I knew the people that were teaching me and doing my tandem because I had lived there for 6 months. So I was actually pretty good friends with everybody. So I actually had a lot of trust. Yeah. And then, I loved it and continued on, and then became, a couple years later, I became an instructor.
Have you ever had a close call?
Many.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you think about in those moments?
Oh, shit. I mean, you just it's a high-speed sport, so you don't have a lot of time to think. So you do your... On the ground, you do your emergency procedures in your head so many times that it is actually kind of like, oh crap, this is happening, so I know what to do, do it. But your adrenaline just goes like crazy.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a drug. I tried to say it to my ex all the time, like, you know that's your own brand of drug. And he's like, no, I'm not an adrenaline junkie. I'm like, I think you are. I'm pretty sure you are.
Yeah.
Did you quit because of having children? Yeah, I figured.
Yeah, and I got burned out. I wanted to have like indoor plumbing in my own place and not use
because you were at the
bathrooms.
camp.
Yeah, it was very communal. The lifestyle was very communal, which really worked for me for several years. And I mean, I would say that molded me to be who I am. Those years of skydiving, and that was pivotal because again, I came from a very conservative family. I went to Christian academy from kindergarten to 12th grade. I never was exposed to anything.
What'd your parents think about you running out to be a weirdo jumping out of plane hippie? I say that with all the love in my heart, of course.
Well, honestly, I don't think my mom necessarily loved it, but my dad was out of the picture. So, yeah, I think she probably thought I was crazy. I don't think she loved it just because of the risk.
Yeah.
But I did it anyhow.
I think it's such an interesting irony that you faced death in that regard, and now here you are photographing death, basically, life and into death. Going back to the kids, you've been present, I assume, in a lot of moments of last breaths.
Not a ton. A lot of times, though, I'll be there, and I know that they're going to disconnect after I leave.
Yeah.
That day, you know.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you know, I don't, you know, they're like children who are undergoing treatment. And you know, I just photographed a little girl in December, who was 3, and they had just stopped treatment for her because
cancer.
And it just wasn't working. And so I knew that she was going to die within about 6 weeks is what her prognosis was. So that was really, really hard. Just, you know, it was because I did that at their home, and then we went for a walk to this little park, and, you know, just, you know, obviously the parents and I knew the whole situation. There was 2 other siblings and a baby. She was the middle child, and then an older boy. And the older boy, they had told, but they weren't sure exactly how much he had grasped, you know, was grasping. But that was, you know, really, really hard. I've only been in a few cases where I was actually in the room while they were turning off everything. But
did anything happen that you are aware of as they took their last breath in those cases?
Like,
you know how some say you can feel the soul leave the body or anything like that?
No, nothing like that for me. You know, and there is a whole aspect of it that I am doing a job. It's kind of like a documentary that I'm doing, and I am on my A game. So, like, I'm working very hard to not screw up anything, constantly looking at my settings, staying out of the way. You know, these rooms aren't very big, and when there's like, you know, 15 people in there between the hospital staff and parents and family and grandmas and grandpas, I have to like be very small and, you know, just like make sure that I'm getting these behind the scenes documentary style stuff. I mean, once in a while I will direct a little bit, and but I try to stay quiet because it's not about me. But I've cried in the rooms with parents as well. But yeah, it's been pretty intense, I guess.
Has it changed your own perspective of mortality for yourself? Other than knowing that you are in the present, we talked about that, but I mean the real idea of death. Because that speaks to life.
Somewhat, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, again, like the skydiving, I was fully aware of my mortality. I lost friends that were my age, which was in their 20s. In their 20s, and then some, you know, 30s, 40s, but I was in my 20s at that time. So it was in my face. It was definitely, you know, every time you leave an airplane, you don't know whether you're going to survive or if all the people that were on the load are going to survive with, you know, if anybody's going to make a mistake that's going to cost them their life. So I come from that I thrive in those environments, I guess, like where I am reminded of mortality, and I think everybody should
what, jump out of an airplane?
be reminded of their mortality. I think it's kind of healthy to lose someone unexpectedly every so often, because it does reset you.
Yeah, I've died twice.
Okay.
And come back.
How?
I drowned when I was 3 and was brought back, and the second time was on an operating table, and so the doctor brought me back, or the doctor and nurses brought me back. So, but I don't know if that counts, because I've had a couple, not very many.
Do you remember either one of them?
Second one. My body remembers the drowning, but my mind remembers the operating table one. Very, very distinctively, or distinctly, one of those two words.
Mm-hmm.
All of those words.
Well, yeah, so that has to reset you.
Yeah, I think, but I'm as human as the next person, and I get caught up in the bullshit of life all the time.
It's amazing how quickly, like I leave there and I'm just like, I need to just stay like grateful. You have to just stay in a place of gratitude, really.
Yeah. I do feel I'm relatively grateful. I know that's kind of a conundrum thing to say, but I do. But it's easy to get tangled up.
It's so easy. I'm like, how is, when I leave the hospital and I had this like incredible experience, it's like life-changing, and I'm like feel like I'm good to go for 3 years. I'm not going to take a thing for granted. I'm not going to get upset about any small stuff. I'm good to go. And then like 3 days later, I'm like having a temper tantrum because, whatever. And I'm just like, how did I slip back into this whole, but I'm human, and that's what we do. Yeah. We tend to feel sorry for ourselves a lot. So, and get wrapped up in stuff that just doesn't matter. It really just doesn't matter.
Before I came to Florida, I did the obligatory bathing suit shopping, which I haven't done in years because it's traumatic. And I'm 6'1", so people get annoyed when I say that. Like, I hate, because they just assume that if you're 6'1" and thin, that you will just automatically worship the body you are in, which is ridiculous. We all have our stuff. Mm-hmm. I have really nice wrists, I think. But so I was in the bathing suit in Target, trying on bathing suits. Lighting in Target is not your friend.
No, it is not.
Your friend even a little.
It's not.
It's horrifying. And
I don't know why these dressing rooms, these big retail stores do not dial into the lighting. Hello, Target people.
You would sell a lot more clothes, I think.
Lighting is everything. If they would, light. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like, it's not a good choice to light it like that. It's horrible. I just cannot wait to get those clothes back off.
Yeah.
Like,
I took the leap of faith. I bought this bathing suit, and I wasn't thrilled, but I went home, and then I tried it on again. It was a lot better in my own lighting at home. But so flash forward a few days later, and I was lifting something, and I remember in that moment in the dressing room thinking, oh God, I worked so hard at the gym, and if I could fix this or fix that or whatever. And then flash forward a little bit, and I was having to pick something up that was relatively heavy, and then something fell, and I caught it at the last second before it crashed, and then I thought, well, look at that, thank you, body. And it kind of chokes me up a little bit, because I think we get so caught up in all the things we're not, and we forget all the things that we are. It's this body of mine has survived some pretty intense stuff, and it's scarred and it's battered, and it doesn't always run optimally, and I have aches and whatever. But look at how much it does do for me. And so I feel like I allow myself to have those moments of, oh my God, what am I doing putting on this bathing suit? So that I can get to those moments of, thank you, body, for doing all the things you do. It's hard to be human. So hard to be human.
Yeah, it is. It is. We make it hard. I mean, there is something to be said for... There are some people who I think dial into something else.
They do. And they are able to stay in it.
Yeah.
Like the Dalai Lama. He probably has no trouble shopping for bathing suits. Just saying.
And look at him. Would you just look at him?
He is pretty adorable.
Yeah.
I'll give him that. I assume Little Light of Mine is a nonprofit.
Yes, it is.
So how do you find funds to help it continue on? And we talked off the mic about... In Nashville, Tennessee, where I live, we have a great children's hospital there, and St. Jude and all that. So those are 3 questions in one. What?
Like the expansion, the fundraising.
Yeah.
So fundraising is tricky. I'm a photographer, not a fundraiser, not even really trained in business. So it's always been a struggle even running my own business. And running a nonprofit is exactly like running a business. You just don't charge the people that you're serving, but you got to charge somebody. You have to raise those monies somehow. So we have a couple different, we have a few layers of sponsorships. Of course, we have corporate sponsors that we would love to have. And down at the sustenance level is, we have a campaign called Keep the Lights On, that we are trying to get 300 people to donate $12 a month, which I made that number up based on what I could afford, and I'm pretty poor. So I'm like, even I can afford $12 a month.
I would argue that you're actually quite rich. Just saying.
Yes. Financially challenged, though, sometimes. Yeah. But, we haven't really been actively campaigning for that. But $12 a month, if we had 300 of those donations, it would cover all of our operational costs every month. Mm-hmm. We have a new board member who is working on fundraising, and she is going to beef up our. We haven't written any grants yet. I'm sure we're eligible, but I'm not a grant writer, nor do I know about grants. So it's a lot of research. Yeah. That's a lot of stuff to do.
If any grant writers are listening and would like to donate their time to help this organization, Little Light of Mine, please email me, Susan@heyhumanpodcast.com, and I will forward your info on to her, on to Sheri.
Do it.
Or they could probably email you directly, which would be Sheri...
Kendrick, and Sheri is 1 R and an I, SHERI Kendrick, KENDRICK @LLOM for Little Light of Mine.org.
I'll have links on my website too.
Yeah. That's fundraising is tricky. We have some local, restaurants that do charities. I'm going to be pouring beer on May 22nd. I don't even drink beer, nor do I know how to pour it, but I'm going to learn at Ale and Witch. So that's a local bar.
Ale and Witch. Mm-hmm. When is that going to happen?
May 22nd. It's a Monday.
Oh, it's right before this episode airs.
5. Oh, is it?
Rats. Okay.
5 to 7. So anyhow, we do things like that in the community. We had an event at Winesmith, which is down the street, and they raised, raised over $400 for just a couple of hours being open that night for a wine tasting. So,
well, let's plan a music fundraiser in Nashville. Come on down, and maybe
I would love to do that.
I get some of my fancy pants songwriter friends to donate their time, and we can raise some money.
And we can even promote a little bit of Little Light of Mine services, so I can do a day of shooting, perhaps.
That'd be awesome.
So I would love to do that. I've not been to Nashville, so I would love to go. But as far as expanding, once we get our training wheels off here and we have everything documented, I would really, really love to go to the main all children's hospitals throughout the country and start Little Light of Mine chapters, I guess that would be under our umbrella here, and offer these services. We do get calls from around the country of parents asking for our services, and right now we don't have the funding to fly me around to these different places.
You should contact some of these airlines who are in desperate need of good PR and say, hey, why don't you fly me around since everybody hates you? I'm thinking of a couple in general.
Yeah. I won't wear leggings. But I am over 12, so there's that. I might wear leggings. I like them. They're comfy. But anyhow, so I would love to expand. I wasn't thinking of expanding when I first started. And when I first started Little Light of Mine, I wasn't even going to be a 501c3. I wasn't going to have a team. I didn't need a team. I was just going to personally volunteer 4 hours of my life every month and go and photograph families in this that would qualify. I did not think that 4 hours would not be enough to handle the demand, because I'm thinking in my naive little world that I live in, I don't know of anybody in this situation. So There must not be that many.
There's so many.
There's so many. It's mind-blowing. So when I started doing it, I mean, quickly, I was like, I can't do this alone. Like, this is a big, big project. So then I started putting my team together and went ahead and did the 501c3 application and approval. And so we're all legit and big and growing. And now that I've had these requests, and it breaks my heart to tell them I can't come.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it really is a horrible thing to tell someone, no, I'm sorry, I just can't do it. And I suggest them call like local photographers to see if anybody would do it. But what I was thinking of, I don't know if I said this during the break or not, but is that, you know, I think parents, there's a fair amount of parents who really want someone experienced in dealing with handicapped and disabled children so that it's not foreign to them and they aren't like, oh my gosh, you know, there might be a deformality, like a cleft palate, which is really no big deal, but to some people they might not know how to, you know, they might like avoid looking at them or something, or it's just weird stuff that the average person does.
Yeah.
So it's a reasonable fear.
Yeah.
And, you know, you don't want your photographer like in there going, oh, you know, or stumbling around the equipment or just like not knowing how to handle the kids because they've got tubes and stuff. And I'm very comfortable around kids. I'm very comfortable around medical equipment and disabilities, and none of that really gets to me. And death, yeah. You know. So, and we train. We're developing a training program for the photographers. It is a very specific kind of thing. Not every photographer is cut out for this at all, and I learned that the hard way too. But,
how do you mean?
Well, before we would take any photographer who said they were a photographer. You know, we were kind of desperate to build the team, and then, you know, I mean, we did go with them shadowing and me shadowing them. And sometimes, I mean, they would just be so awkward, or their technical skills, because it's crazy. You know, you're in a fluorescent lighting, the child's laying in a hospital bed. It's not like you're in a beautiful park or you're in a studio with controlled lighting. You know, I mean, you have to deal with whatever is there. And so technically your skills have to be pretty seasoned, and your people skills need to be, there's just, you know, you have to have an empathic spirit.
Yeah.
And some people just feel very awkward, and that awkwardness really comes out in their personality. So they I've seen people like raise their, you know, just speak like they're deaf. And it's like, they are deaf. They're a deaf guy, you know, you don't need to yell. And then they just become like, kind of like this Bozo the Clown, you know, and I'm like, wow, what just happened in there? Like, no.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you made me feel uncomfortable. I can't imagine how you made the family. And so I've had to like weed out a lot of people. And now we have an application process where you have to submit photos. That's the first thing, just to see your technical skills. And I've been surprised. I've been surprised at how many professional photographers there are that send me their 20 best images, and I'm like, wow, no, they look like, you know, maybe cell phone shots or something. I'm like, wow, really?
Yeah.
So now
you've just terrified half the people that were willing to. I'm just kidding. They're like, we were gonna do it, maybe not now.
Yeah.
It's good. You gotta wait it out.
If you feel that way.
Yeah. No, you gotta.
I mean, you have to have, you know, there has to be a certain amount of skill level.
I think it's very important to know it in this particular case. This isn't, you know, glamour shots.
No, and a lot of times, one time I had a photographer go to the hospital. This is early on, and they went and did a shoot and then delivered their pictures, and everything was off, the focusing, because of the low lighting, and their aperture set really in a very finicky state, which allowed more light in, but it made for very shallow depth of field. Anyhow, the pictures were off. There was like things in focus, like, you know, the kneecap would be in focus instead of the face or whatever. So I called the hospital. I'm like, I need to come back in. I need to come back and do this over. And they're like, oh, the child died yesterday. And I'm like, okay, all right. So
then what do you do?
Well, nothing in that case. But that was like, that's when we started doing an application process.
That was
and
the
we
final
really
straw. Yeah.
tightened up like who comes in and is a part, and again, it's like the whole package. It's the quality of the work. Because I don't want different families to get different stuff.
Yeah.
I want everybody who comes through Little Light of Mine and gets our services to have the same quality of work. So we have about 3 photographers that are really, really, really sharp, and they have the right personalities. And so they're great. So,
great.
And we want to grow the team and all that, but right now we have the application process, which weeds out many, many people.
Yeah.
So
I wish dating had an application process. I've been thinking about that a lot lately.
There should be.
I know.
There should be.
One that they had to fill out, and then somebody that they know has to fill out, but they don't get to see each other's answers.
I have always thought that when you're dating, the guy should come with references. I would like to speak. If you're on bad terms with every single ex, there's a reason for that.
Yeah. The one thing that is the same in all those equations is the person that has. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if people want to donate, which hopefully they will, it's LLOM.org.
Yes, and there is a donate button on there. We are revamping our website. I'm actually learning a little bit of WordPress stuff right now, so I can be in control of it. But there is a donate button, and it should work. Technically, I think it works. So
I hope you raise tons and tons of money so that this grows, because I think it's really important.
It really, really has a place. I mean, everybody in the world can relate to a photograph, either looking back at your own childhood photographs or photographs maybe from 2 weeks ago of some event that you were at, or people that mean a lot to you. For parents, looking at pictures of my children, it's magic, really. Photography is magic to me. I don't even understand how the camera works. I've had people I'm not technically inclined. People ask me ask me technical questions all the time. I'm like, listen, I'm on a need-to-know basis. What happens in that little black box is magic. I know there's a mirror and there's shit that's upside down and it flips around. But how you push a button and it captures like this scene, this moment in time is magic to me.
But I think it has a lot to do with the photographer.
For me, it's all about the person to person.
Yeah.
And it's through this little box, but
it's a true art form.
It is, and so. I don't know where I was going with that, but I got all
parents.
sidetracked
I was saying that it's an important.
It does have a place. So everybody, the average person, everybody can relate to a photograph, and how like even if it was a year ago or 2 weeks ago or 15 years ago, you look at an image and you can almost. It's like music. Music is a nostalgia effect on you. You hear music or you see an image, and you are transported back to that moment almost. You can feel, you can almost hear the laughter that was happening that day, or smell smells sometimes. It's really bizarre how those senses take you back in time. And for a lot of these parents, that is all they are left with, is these images. And out of all of our senses, visual is the most powerful. So, I feel like if you can just imagine what your photographs mean to you and then up that a little bit, because if that child is no longer with us, then that is what you are pretty much reduced to, is these images and the feelings that you have, the memories that you have. And I think it's powerful. I mean, it is a powerful gift. It's so meaningful. There's priceless. It's absolutely priceless. I couldn't even put a price tag on the service. Yeah. So I am very honored to be able to give this to people, and I would absolutely love to see it expand nationwide. And you had mentioned you think that sometimes parents feel weird about reaching out and saying, hey, I'd like this picture, because maybe their children don't look like the Gerber baby or something, right. And so they have this apprehension, for lack of or yeah, fear, and I also think that they're absolutely, and I also feel like sometimes they're afraid because it's a vulnerable space, that these parents are in, and they might, a lot of times during the photo shoot, the parents end up kind of weepy, especially if I'm like, I create these, like orchestrate these moments where they're holding the baby, and I'm like, okay, now just close your eyes and put your cheek right up next, and you can just see tears start to stream down their face, which of course always makes me also get leaky. But I'm just, and parents have written me and said, not only are the images absolutely the world to them, but that I created that moment, because you get wrapped up in the tests and the, injections and the blood being drawn and this and the alarms and all of this stuff. And sometimes you kind of, they have told me they forget to take those tender moments and just be, just be there and just smell the baby, like just be right there and present, So I've had a lot of thank you letters where people are not only thanking me for the photographs, but thanking me for the experience that brought them, and that they will, because I want them to look at the photographs and not just have it contrived, okay, smile, okay, click, next. Like, it's very slow. Like, I want everybody, to just block out everything as much as you can, and we're going to be here now.
Really present.
Yeah. And so that when you look at these photographs, you are remembering this moment, and this moment is a moment that you're, you will cherish. And we just have to ease into that. It's almost like meditation, where you just sort of ease into that. Okay, block everything.
I'm curious, do the older children ever step in and say, hey, can we do this or that? Mm-hmm. They do.
I invite them to.
Yeah.
I want them to be a part of it. I want that,
Yeah.
And any ideas that you have that I'm not having, because I'm just a mortal photograph. So I love, even for my, healthy families that I photograph, I always invite people to tell me if they have any ideas. And kids come up with the best ideas anyhow.
Sure.
So they're like, oh, why don't we do this? I'm like, let's do it.
Yeah.
If we can do it, let's do it. So, a lot of times they do. I mean, a lot of times we're very limited.
Yeah.
But it's all great. I feel like this is the most meaningful work I've ever done. I feel like it's right for me. It was a struggle. I've been doing it for, 3 or 4 years. First while I didn't have a 501c. I wasn't collecting money, and that definitely set me back.
Yeah.
But I really always have felt like this would generate. It needs to get in front of the right people, but I do feel that it has a place. It has a place in the world.
I agree.
The parents, like you said, are often financially just completely devastated. And aside, like I said, from finances, it's a very vulnerable space that you're inviting them into. Or that they're inviting you into. So I feel like a lot of parents want to have someone who is comfortable, who is going to be soothing, who's not going to. You're not going to have to, the parents aren't going to have to take care of them and go, oh, it's okay, that we've been in this environment before, it's okay.
Yeah.
And we can actually provide some comfort and soothing to them and treat them as if they're a normal family as much as we can, make them feel normal for a few minutes.
It must be incredibly beautiful when they see the images when you bring them to them.
I don't get to see that.
Oh, because they go online.
Because they're a link.
Yeah.
And
okay.
But I do get a lot of thank you letters.
I bet.
do.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
And I've gotten to know a few families, pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that I'm probably going to be friends with some of these guys forever.
Yeah.
They feel like family to me now. And I've gone to people's homes after. And done because we will shoot more than once. If the child is surviving and there's milestones, birthdays, whatever, I'll go back and continue to photo. I'll be their family photographer until either they graduate from being terminally ill or they pass.
Yeah.
So, and I've gone back and, they've used their link to make their whole house a gallery of all these canvases and beautiful artwork that I did. And I'm like,
that's incredible.
Wow, this is like
what a gift.
Gallery of my work. I love it here. And it looks beautiful, It's just like all these sweet, tender moments. And I mean, I have a pretty big screen, but that's as big as I see it.
Yeah. So
when I see these giant canvases on someone's wall, and then I really know wow, they obviously loved their pictures.
Yeah.
So I'm really it's great. It's great work. It's really great work.
Thank you for being in the universe. Thank you for bringing your gifts to the world. I mean, I think it's just beyond. It's great. Sheri Kendrick, Little Light of Mine, thank you for being on the show.
Well, thank you for coming down here from Nashville and doing the show.
My pleasure. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.